almost alone among Western leaders is the guy saying we're going to end up in World War III if we're not careful here. A war with Russia should be avoided because they see it as an existential war. I mean, this is a war, this is a fight for their very survival. It isn't that for us. And of the many things that are worth fighting and dying for, I personally don't think Ukraine is one of them.
And this is what I hate about the progressives. They sit there and they go, yeah, no, you've got to be patriotic, I'm like, well, then send your son. If you care that much, go and fight. You know, go. If you really care that much, you want to spend all day on X telling everyone how terrible Putin is. But why wouldn't you try and have better relations with someone like that, who has the biggest resources of untapped minerals and fuel and carbon energy in the entire world? Why would you just go, he's Hitler? It's so boring. They go, Trump's Hitler. Anyone who doesn't agree with me is Hitler. And it's like, unless you're an LGBTQ person of colour in a wheelchair, disabled, with your transgendered balls off, you're not worth listening to. It's like the Oscars.
Welcome to another episode of What Are We Smoking Today? What are you smoking today?
I'm smoking a licorice Rizzler paper with some Golden Virginia Classic tobacco in it. And I have a cold and flu remedy here.
Well, very good. Lori has hot toddies. I smoked last night a nice Trinidad here in Rome, my first cigar since I was in Switzerland about a month ago. Yes, this is another episode of WTF, the world according to those sages, men of the world, men of profound wisdom and knowledge, Lawrence Taunton and Lawrence Fox. How are you?
Well, it's just such a heavy burden to bear being so wise and sageful, isn't it? For both
I just live with it. I just live with it. You sound like you're about to die.
This is me getting better. You should have seen me a couple of days ago. I'm past the stage where your head feels like it's going to explode. And I'm now in the stage of where the reason your head was about to explode is all coming out. So I really hope that everyone can really enjoy maybe I'll just go for some really like this kind of level voice, just to really help out. But it's been another really, how are you actually, first and foremost?
I can't complain. Life is pretty good. I'm about to head home. Still here in Rome. I've been incredibly busy. I feel like I want to go home and crash for a month, just sleep for a month. I've been nothing but going from one interview to the next, to the next, to the next, pumping out this or that article and so on. But it's been good. It's been an incredibly productive 2 months worth of travel. And I'm glad that Lori has been with me for the last few weeks, which has been very good. And Zachary and Nikki are here in Rome, so that's good. And we'll probably go to dinner with them this evening, which I'm looking forward to. And yeah, so I can't complain. I'm alarmed that we are careening towards World War III if EU leaders get what they want. But otherwise, I'm good.
It's not going to happen. Have you not read Zelensky's latest tweet? Come on.
Zelensky, read it to me. What does it say?
It's a real cracker. I've been attacked relentlessly because I'm not falling for the mass formation psychosis of the Zelensky thing. Where is he? Okay. I would like to reiterate Ukraine's commitment to peace. None of us wants an endless war, except the whole of the world, except Trump. Ukraine is ready to come to a negotiating table soon as possible, bring lasting peace closer. Nobody wants peace more than Ukrainians. My team and I stand ready to work under President Trump's strong leadership. So he's finally worked out that, it didn't take a brain surgeon, did it, to work out that Trump's not going to say that he's going to do something that he doesn't do. It's part of his nature. And he's just gone, sorry, mate, that's how it's going to be. Sign the mineral deal. And then all the UK journos who I've noticed this very strange, well, it's not very strange, and I think I mentioned it last week about turning a virtue into a fault. But the exactly same thing has happened over COVID, has happened over Ukraine in the UK. So what happens is the cohort of mainstream journalists who are regarded as edgy, but they're not edgy on any level whatsoever, sit there and they create a narrative. And the narrative is, if you don't support Ukraine with every fibre of your being and are not ready to jump on a plane and go and have your head blown off by some battle-hardened Russian who's been sat there for the last 2.5 years, then you're in some way not a patriot. And I've not fallen for the mass formation psychosis this time, in the same way as I didn't fall for it over COVID. So I've been writing to them in a nice way, not calling them names, because they call you names. So we're called Quislings or MAGA extremists or something. It's very strange what they call it. And I just go, but, have you looked at the history of Ukraine at all? Do you understand the history of Ukraine? Have you bothered reading anything beneath the headline that was written on any newspaper article you've ever written, seeing as you're a journalist and that's what you do for a living? And it tends to get greeted with quite a lot of disdain. I'm very, very unpopular amongst the journalism class in the UK, but I'm very, very popular on the streets of the UK because people come up and go, "You're just talking common sense, Lawrence. Russia's big, Ukraine's small. Someone's got to have to do a deal. Trump wants it done. It's going to get done, isn't it?" And I'm like, yeah, that would seem to be how it is. But I've got a theory, which I'm going to lob out there, and I want to hear. I've got two theories, but I'll give you the first one. Starmer has realised our idiot socialist moron who runs our country has. What are you doing? Oh,
haven't you seen the video of him boxing?
Yeah.
Of him boxing.
No, except but you looked good when you were doing it. So he was. Well,
that's because I've done it before. But he's more like that, which honestly I wouldn't hold against him, except for the fact that, who is this PR person who said, "Yeah, we're going to put you in boxing gloves today. You'll look tough." My gosh, it looks terrible. But let's hear the theory.
So the theory is that they've realised that net zero, that's not going to work in the UK. Not with drill baby drill in America, and not with the entire rest of the world going, should we turn on the oil taps, guys? Because we need to do some prosperity again, because this whole kind of transgender solar-powered penis thing is not going to work for everybody. And so what they've done is they've done a good switcheroo, a little bait and switch, which is going, oh, look, this is a perfect opportunity to get rid of net zero. So what we'll do is we'll move away from net zero carbon, and we'll go for net zero Ukrainians instead. So what will happen is they'll usher net zero out the door. So we'll go back to, living like normal people who try and make prosperous nations. And unfortunately, Keir Starmer's just going to have to feed a few hundred, because there aren't that many British soldiers left in the British Army. He's going to have to feed a few hundred British soldiers into the Ukrainian war machine and see if the meat grinder spits them out. Well, he goes, and yesterday, Keir Starmer actually said, by increasing defence spending, which he now has to do because we don't live under the umbrella of American security, Trump made that fairly clear, by increasing defence spending, he's not going to be able to afford things like net zero, idiot ideas like net zero, or indeed a welfare state and uncontrolled borders. So it's actually, I think it's going to work out pretty well in the end for all of us. I think that Trump's played a blinder. Everyone hates me and they go, like, you're a Trump obsessive. And I'm like, no, I just think he's really good at what he does. So, I like him. What do you make of it?
Well, I agree with that assessment. I like Trump. Obviously, I agree with Trump. I'm very appreciative of the fact that he almost alone among Western leaders, certainly alone among major, nations, is the guy saying, we're going to end up in World War III if we're not careful here. And, I recall something my youngest son, Zachary, the one who's here in Rome, said that I thought was quite profound a few years ago during the whole COVID thing. Is he said that my generation, they want their life to be like a movie line. They're looking for drama in their life, and lacking it, they seek to create it. And we don't have, I'm old enough to remember, you're old enough to remember, a World War II generation, having met some of them, having talked to them. Your father is old enough to, he was a child, but he's old enough to harken back to that era and to speak on it with some knowledge. My own father certainly was, and so on. And so we have some I hope generational wisdom that's been imparted to us. We have some understanding of that. Say nothing of Vietnam and some of the first Gulf War, certainly the second Gulf War, but the carnage, the absolute carnage of the Second World War. And I find it so very interesting how many people are Ukrainian flag waving, having never been to the country, knowing nothing about it, knowing nothing about Russia, knowing nothing of their shared history, knowing nothing. Let's just think of Russia's history in World War II, just World War II, by way of example, because I keep hearing people say, well, this could be another potential Vietnam if we're involved. And those are people who are against the war. And I'm saying, not Vietnam. This would be World War III. And of the casualties of World War II, roughly 55 million dead, half of them were Russians. Half of them. The United States knows nothing. Thank God. God has truly shed his grace on our history. We know nothing of the kind of carnage that Russia has suffered, nothing of the suffering that Russia and Ukraine have known in their own histories. And if you go to Moscow today, on the outskirts of Moscow, there's a tank, a lone German Panzer that sits there. And it's there to mark that this is the closest the Wehrmacht, the German army, got to Moscow. They got close enough so that a tank commander was standing out of his tank with his field glasses, counting the turrets on the Kremlin when he was wounded. I mean, they were that close to taking Moscow, and yet the Russians threw them back. And again, 20 to 25 million Russians died in that war. They lost more people just in Leningrad, the Battle of Leningrad, than we lost in the entire war times 3. Same with Stalingrad, just those two battles separately. We think, Private Ryan saved the war at D-Day. They call it the Great Patriotic War, and they think, no, it was one at Stalingrad. That's the way they look at it. And the point that I'm simply trying to make here is that a war with Russia should be avoided because they see it as an existential war. I mean, this is a war. This is a fight for their very survival. It isn't that for us. And of the many things that are worth fighting and dying for, I personally don't think Ukraine is one of them.
Yeah, I mean, I find it. I'm on a daily basis. I'm kind of shocked that Keir Starmer is so. This guy, literally a week ago, he was locking up British people for saying, our country's being invaded by Islamic hordes. Can we do something about it? And he was locking them up and saying, you're disgusting. Diversity is our greatest strength. But now he's willing to go and throw British soldiers into some sort of, 38th parallel to try and stop the incoming Russian hordes. As you quite rightly point out, people they're battle hardened and they're ready. But the man has gone from hating his country to being the biggest flag shagger in the country, talking about patriotism and the like. And I just find it so utterly ridiculous, to the point of absurdity, that our own country is being invaded. We saw a severed leg in Mannheim in Germany yesterday. That's the second in 2 weeks of car attacks meted out on the German people.
Yeah, I saw that.
And if you think about it, when did Angela Merkel let in the Syrian refugees? She let in 1.5 million, didn't she, in one tranche about 3 and a bit years ago? So Britain has just let in 2 million in 2 years. So we are about to experience an explosion in Islamic-based violence in our country. And Keir Starmer really cares about the borders of Ukraine, which didn't really exist until 1948, as far as I can gather. And, the other things, as far as I can gather from trying to learn, and just listening to things and reading prominent historians, is that, you've sort of put Putin in a position where, if you're going to take all of the countries and put them in NATO around the only warm sea port Russia has, which he tried to lease off the Ukrainians for 25 years. And the West and Biden administration, Obama administration say, no, sorry, buddy, you're not going to have that. We're going to goad you. Then at some point, he's going to make a decision which we're not going to like. And this strange conflagration of people that are no longer in power, that a lot of them aren't elected, in this sort of unity is strength thing against Putin. I'm like, wouldn't it be better in 2025, sorry for being like a Putin apologist or a Russian disinformationist or whatever the hell they call us, wouldn't it be better if the West tried to make better relations with Russia? Wouldn't it be better? I mean, they've got all.
Well, of course, that's Trump's point.
But they've got an awful lot of gas, which, and the figures have come out today that we've spent more on their gas than we have on our own defense or on giving money to the Ukrainians to fight them. So if I was a big global superpower like Russia or America, Trump at least has the balls to call it out. I just sit there and go, you're just being little Englanders. You're nothing. You think you hold a place in this world which your grandfathers didn't even hold. And, you talk about the losses in Stalingrad and Leningrad. But, if you take the Battle of Ukraine as one single battle, there's over 1 million dead. That's more than, we're talking about one of the worst battles in European history. And this is what I hate about the progressives. They sit there and they go, no, but you've got to be patriotic, I'm like, well, then send your son. If you care that much, go and fight. Go. If you really care that much, you want to spend all day on X telling everyone how terrible Putin is. I'm not saying Putin's a nice guy. He's Novichoked the hell out of people in our country, and I don't think he's to be trusted. I don't. But why wouldn't you try and have better relations with someone like that, who has the biggest resources of untapped minerals and fuel and carbon energy in the entire world? Why would you just go, he's Hitler? It's so boring. They go, Trump's Hitler. Anyone who doesn't agree with me is Hitler. And it's like, unless you're an LGBTQ person of color in a wheelchair, disabled, with your transgendered balls off, you're not worth listening to. It's like the Oscars. The film that won I can't, sorry, I'm all over the shop just because I don't feel well. But the Oscars, the film that won all of the Oscars, do you know how much money
I don't even know what won. I have no idea.
I don't know. I can't name it. But do you know how much money it made in the box office?
$500,000.
$15 million. So bearing in mind that $15 million is the biggest flop in cinema history. Like, it's the biggest flop. And these people are giving themselves awards. And Reagan can't even get a... So we're living in two separate worlds. And in the real world, you want a good relationship, as good a relationship as you could possibly have with Russia. And in the fake world, you want war against them, which you're going to lose. And I just find that living in the fake world so unbearably boring because it's so predictable. And I was speaking to my friend this morning about it, and he said that those that side with people like Ukraine, or those that side with the bully, always end up losing. And his prediction, and he's never got things wrong, was that all of these Western leaders are going to be rolling back in the next 2 or 3 weeks because Trump's not going to move on it. And I think good for him. That's my take on all of that.
Well, here's just a question for you to speculate about. But being a Brit and having a strong opinion about Starmer, which I share, if, let's just say theoretically, that Starmer does send soldiers to the Ukrainian meat grinder, how many of them do you think are going to be, part of your culturally diverse community?
Oh, not none, because the culturally diverse community don't see themselves as English. So we're an airport hotel. Britain is an airport hotel. That's all we are nowadays. It's like, I'm in room 414 and I need some ice cream. It's like, okay, but are you going to like contribute to changing the light bulbs in the corridors. It's like, no, this is an airport hotel. I don't give a shit about the hotel. I don't care whether the carpets are clean. I don't care whether I just throw my food outside the door when I'm finished with it. You've been there. You've stayed in these hotels. You have the narrow corridors and it's just rotten food outside every door all the way down, and that is our country in a nutshell. No one has looked after our country and the inheritance that we're going to pass on to our children. I saw 2 soldiers today when I was going on my mission to commit DIY, a crime against DIY, which I did successfully complete this afternoon in building a bench seat. But I saw 2 soldiers and they were both diverse people, but you could tell that they took themselves seriously. But if Keir Starmer tried to get people to conscript, if he tried to bring in a conscription service, a conscription policy into the British Army, no one would join. It just would never happen. And if he sent the soldiers to fight, I think they'd go because they have a proud history of fighting. But I think it would be suicide for him. I think he's. But, you look at the opinion polls and he's suddenly shooting up in the opinion polls. Like everyone's like, oh, isn't he such a great leader? And I'm like, no, he's not leading. He's manipulating. He's devious. He's not a real guy. He's not a real man. So I don't think any of the, 30, well, we've got 38,000 people on a terror watch list in the UK. So, I mean, they would be the first people I would conscript to go and fight for Britain, wouldn't they? They'd be brilliant. They'd be like, Allahu Akbar! That's the only time I'd ever like to hear Allahu Akbar said ever again, would be the 37,000 on the Islamic terror watch list in the United Kingdom, which is pretty sort of similar to what our deployable armed forces are. And, go and mow down some Russians. It's pathetic. I never in my life have I wanted to not... 2 things. Never in my life have I wanted to leave this country, but more, whilst at the same time feeling very sad that my children are going to have to grow up in this country. And the second one is, never in my life have I wanted us to get kicked in the arse more, to get absolutely punished by Trump and to get absolutely punished by our own vainglorious view that we have some relevance in the world, which is any way other than cultural, because the only relevance Britain has is that we were 1,500-year experiment, which seems to be working still vaguely. That's my my take. Sorry, I'm rambling, but that's how I feel. What do you think?
It's going to be very interesting. I think it's going to be very interesting to see how all of this plays out. I am wondering if, Starmer, some of the other members of the EU aren't trying to trip NATO Article 5, which would, according to the terms of that article, it would require the United States to commit itself militarily and financially to a war against Russia. But I've been working on an article today for publication that's laying out sort of the history of this whole war or this whole conflict. That what led up to the place where we are now. I'm calling it domino theory in reverse, and the idea here goes something like this: that the domino theory. You know what I'm talking about when I talk about the domino theory. The idea. George Kennan, who is was a historian, statesman, advisor to multiple presidents. He developed the domino theory, and that was this idea that communism would bleed into various countries that would then fall like dominoes until ultimately, the United States, was encircled. And but what I think we're seeing right now is the domino theory in reverse. And since the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, we have seen the eastward expansion of NATO to include, just since 1999, Czech Republic, Hungary, Poland, Bulgaria, Estonia, Latvia, both border states, by the way, Lithuania, Romania, Slovakia, Slovenia, Albania, Croatia, Montenegro, North Macedonia, Finland, another border state, Sweden, and then Norway was already a member. Norway's a border state. Turkey, we could call a kind of border state if we're talking about just across the the Black Sea.
Yeah.
And then there have been efforts to topple democratically elected governments in Kazakhstan and Belarus. And then there was the maiden, so-called revolution, which was not a revolution. It was a Obama era a coup d'état of a democratically elected but pro-Russian regime in 2014 in Ukraine. And it was after that Putin invaded. And he invaded all along. His signaling was anything but you recall always the narrative is crazy, crazy, crazy. The guys who flew the planes into the Twin Towers, they're all crazy. What happened with Putin's invasion? He's crazy. He's unhinged. We kept hearing that out of the Washington war machine. It was perfectly logical from Putin's point of view. And it was because he kept signaling, hey, you guys nearly went to war with us. You threatened nuclear war when we were trying to put missiles in Cuba 90 miles off of your coast. Now you are doing the same thing in reverse, except now it's not 90 miles. You are exactly on our border, encircling us from Turkey all the way to Norway. And he had signaled that they considered Ukraine to be the tripwire, that for them has, and their history is incredibly complicated and entwined, so much so that the first Russian state was founded in what is modern day Ukraine. So Russia has never considered Ukraine to be anything other than part of Russia. I mean, the word Ukraine means borderlands. I mean, bordering what? Well, the border of Russia, that is part of Russia. That's the way that they've always understood it. Now, we can argue that and whether or not that's legitimate. But the point is, from Putin's point of view, this was an entirely logical move and one that he said that he would make. Because if you invite Ukraine to join NATO, which Blinken did, which the Obama administration did, the arrogance of U.S. successive, both Democratic and Republican administrations from Clinton straight through to Biden, Trump being the sole exception, their arrogance was astonishing. And they decided, you know what? It just makes perfect sense for us to use Ukraine to provoke Russia. And that's where we find ourselves right now, so that we are on the brink of a catastrophic potential third world war. And by the way, that's to say nothing of what's happening in the Middle East. I mean, this could rapidly expand to include the whole of Europe, the Middle East. And by the way, sitting somewhere on a limb like a vulture is China, who's another player in all of this. So I like what Trump is doing. I like the fact that Trump is playing hardball here. He's telling Zelensky, who, by the way, when he left the White House, he didn't just desecrate the White House. He didn't just insult the president of the United States and his probable successor, J.D. Vance, but he decided to then go on sort of a world tour and doing some coke-fueled interviews where he just decided to add to that, even more insulting. An apology that was clearly not an apology, where he's on video and angry and this kind of thing. It's all, to me, I'm so glad that Trump has said, look, we're shutting you off and we're going to negotiate an end to this war. You're going to be sitting at the little play school table over here. We're not even including you in the negotiation. Well, we're going to be dealing directly with Putin.
I agree with you right up until that point. But actually, the mineral deal, if you think about it, the mineral deal is it has nothing to do with Putin. It's to do with Zelensky or Ukraine and America. So the mineral deal.
But that's not about peace.
No, but as far as I can understand, what the point is to go, if I put American interests in Ukraine and then Putin wants to, start lobbing missiles at American interests, then we have a war. We have a war problem. But it's sort of the Belt and Road in reverse is what is kind of what you're describing, is that Trump has worked out how you deal with a problem. It's Occam's razor. He's just applying Occam's razor to the problem, and it's it's amazing that people will twist themselves in knots to go, hang on a minute. And I re-listened to the whole 47 minutes. I mean, it doesn't really get interesting until the last 10. But I re-listened to that a couple of times. And actually, on reflection, I don't think America comes out of it brilliantly. But two things that really struck me were America is taking itself seriously again. And it's demanding respect. And the only other culture that I've noticed that does that is Islam. So Islam goes, we demand respect. And if you don't respect us, we'll have a cry and call you Islamophobic. But America is saying, you show us respect. You're in our country. And the bit where Trump got annoyed, have you seen the hand gesture? Have you seen the breakdown of the hand gestures where he's like, this guy, one of his White House people who was pretty close to him said that when Trump starts to use one finger, you're in real trouble. But when he does that, you're in extraordinary trouble. It's game over. So he sort of does this a lot, doesn't he? And it's very interesting. But America is demanding that it be treated with respect. And I think, good for you. And Vance, I think, goaded Zelensky more than Trump did. I don't think Trump would have got wound up if Vance hadn't.
I don't agree with that.
You don't agree with that? Okay. Well, that's what I reckon. I like it.
For this reason. I think that's the way it appears if you don't understand what this meeting was about. And that's what I think a lot of people have missed regarding this. The whole purpose of the meeting was that this was supposed to be a little press conference. It was supposed to be just a very friendly little pro-Ukrainian happy time in front of the media before Zelensky goes and signs this agreement. That's what the meeting was about. So Zelensky was invited to the White House for that purpose. And Vance is sitting there and starting to get very upset. You can see that he's starting to get wound up because he perceives you have hijacked this. It's like me coming to your wedding, and people not knowing, that I'm supposed to read a text, and I instead get up and I do something entirely different from what we had privately agreed that I would do. And people think, well, why is Lawrence so upset? Why would he be upset about that? What's going on with that? Well, because people didn't understand. And that's why listening to the whole 49 and a half minutes is important, because Trump makes repeated references to the fact that we're going to go and have lunch and sign this agreement. And then Zelensky keeps bringing up that he wants guarantees and he wants this and that. And sitting over there on that sofa is J.D. Vance going, whoa. That's not the purpose of this meeting. This was meant to be just, hey, we're just going to express, mutual admiration and enthusiasm for peace and for this agreement and see an end to the war and this kind of thing. And Zelensky was trying to renegotiate the terms of an agreement that the Trump administration thought was already a done deal. And that's why J.D. Vance looks like the aggressor, because he comes in and the media seems to have not been listening to everything that was leading up to that. And of course, many of them deliberately didn't tell you what the purpose of the meeting was. That's why J.D. Vance looks like the aggressor, but he wasn't. It was Zelensky because he hijacked the meeting for his own purposes.
I agree. Sorry, I should have made it clear. What I'm saying is that Vance deliberately took two moves. The first was to say, you're not dealing with the Biden administration, which was to goad Trump. And the second one was to turn around and go, you're trying to litigate this in front of America's press. So those were two deliberately thrown in hand grenades. I completely agree with you that it was the right thing to do. I'm just saying that they were both quite powerful moves within what, as he kept saying to Zelensky, you're trying to litigate this in front of the world's press. And Vance is a very, very smart guy. And it was just, to me, I looked back at it a few times and listened back to it a few times. And I go, I'm really encouraged that America is taking itself seriously. Like, really encouraged. I find that incredible. And it's not fake serious, like Keir Starmer sending a bunch of 20,000 troops to go and get wiped out in one bombardment of hypersonic missiles from the Russians. It's a serious. It's like you take us seriously. You do what we say, and you're grateful. Otherwise, we leave. And the umbrella of security we have provided you, Great Britain, the whole of Europe. You see, he also played Starmer very well, because Starmer came the day before, and Trump knows when to flatter. So he was quite flattering of Starmer. And he left Vance to turn around and go, "You got a problem with free speech in your country." So he sets up this situation where Trump can be the good cop, Vance can be the bad cop. It's amazing to see a vice president actually doing this, having had Kamala, whatever her face is, for the last few years. It's very clever. And what he's done is he's handed over to Starmer. He said, "Okay, you want to lead? Lead. Go on. Go and lead. Go and lead the United States of Europe against Vladimir Putin. You go and rally all these people. But you know what you don't have, chum? Wonga. None of it. You've got no money." So he succeeded in actually getting our own socialist nightmare prime minister to have to backtrack over net zero at the same time. It's 4D chess with Trump. It's genius. He's absolutely on it.
I also think there was this other key moment that clearly is something that antagonized and continues to be a bone of contention with Trump and Vance, but they decided they weren't going to say anything about it, I think, until Zelensky began abusing his invitation to the White House. And that's when Vance said, "You even campaigned against us."
Yeah. Which he did.
And that was on the heels of him talking about being thankful, meaning we've invited you here. We've been gracious to you. We're trying to help you. We're trying to bring about peace for you and your country. And what did you do? You've abused the invitation. You campaigned against us. You now have you deceived. And see, this is really the big thing. You deceived the president of the United States as to the purpose of your coming. You led us to believe you were coming here to sign this. You're a liar. And you came here for this purpose, and you better believe. So I don't think there was this plan of Trump and Vance to play good cop, bad cop. I think it played out that way because Vance perceived that the man was lying and he had deceived the president of the United States. He was offended on behalf of the people and the president of the United States. And then Trump himself is a little, he's almost playing peacemaker between Vance and Zelensky. But then Zelensky makes what I think is his second big miscalculation. He talks right over the president of the United States, not for a moment, but repeatedly, continually, not listening to Trump. And Trump kept saying, "You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III." And the media ignored that too. And I thought, has the world gone so mad that in the aftermath of that, you have this emergency gathering of all these EU leaders, and they're all flag waving, Ukraine, and talking about how wonderful it all is, and they're almost orgasmic for war. I want war. I want death, destruction. I want. It's like when Harry met Sally, kind of moment, but instead it's war. I mean, is that not the way you're seeing it? They're just like war.
I'm continually amazed that people don't realize that the very people that say that they're doing one thing do the exact opposite. But then it's all big. I think that the left, in their way of turning around and saying, we need our own Joe Rogan, we need our own this, we need our own big seller of influence and all this sort of stuff. And it's like, he was one of you guys, literally 3 years ago.
Forever.
You went mad, and it's becoming clearer and clearer every time one of these sort of, it is a mass formation psychosis. It is like, if you're not Slava-Ukraini, you're unvaccinated, and it's going to be a cold winter of death for the unvaccinated. It's that sort of, it's the same energy that it surprises me. One of these journalists who's been attacking me relentlessly for the last couple of days, he puts up these opinion polls about how they thought the Trump thing went. And I'm like, all these opinion polls are is an indicator of how effective your propaganda is.
I agree with that.
They're not.
And how many of those people watched all 50 minutes?
Yeah, none of them. And it's, I suppose, I mean, it takes you into a deeper, more personal reflection on life, which is that none of this is going to change anytime soon. There are going to be those that don't like us, the Oscar people that vote for a film that no one's watched. Palestinian people on the stage doing down the Jews, and we're just waiting for the world to kind of catch up with common sense, and it's not going to do it for a while. And I've started to think that one should switch off. I wonder if Elon would appreciate that. Actually, I think people should turn off social media. They should they should go back to that life. If you want to reclaim that life that we had in the past, where common sense of what Trump was doing, which was, they'd have to report in some way impartially because they wouldn't be able to completely screw you with the propaganda, is that someone could look at that and observe it and go, well, yeah, I can see both sides of that one. And I wonder if the best thing that we can do as people is to switch the whole thing off for a few months. Like, this is what Lent, we're heading into Lent. Are we in Lent yet? Or not?
No, not yet.
No, but this is what these sorts of periods are for. It's just like, turn it off, switch it off. I've got a feeling that if I turned off social media for a year and I came back a year later, it would be the same argument. Nothing would have changed. Just a lot more people would have lost a lot more sleep and got a lot more angry about things. And I wonder whether actually really the way that we get it back, the way that we get our sense of reason back, is by switching everything off, and keeping conversations as conversations, like the conversation between you and I now, which is good because we're talking just to each other and other people can watch it. But this idea of like tweeting away and like, and then whether you like it or not, you are getting a dopamine hit from going, oh, look, 100,000 people liked that and 4 million people watched it. Wow, I dopamine hit. I've won, blah, blah, blah. Oh, no, brilliant. But actually, you could switch the whole thing off, turn it all back on in a year, and nothing would have changed. That's what I've started to think. And I wonder
So is that what you're going to do? Give up social media for Lent?
I think, and
I'd be interested to see you do that.
I'm 99% there. No, 95% there.
That's interesting.
But no, not for Lent. I'm talking, hear me out. I'm 95% there. There's just a couple of things, because obviously there's our conversations. There's other things like where the value in those are, which I find personally very valuable, but also one has to be connected to the outside world in order to do it. I'm pretty tempted on Monday the 10th, next Monday, to turn off social media, all forms of social media and all forms of media full stop. So any news channel, anything like that, for 6 months till the 10th of September.
That would be, what's with the 10th of September?
It's 6 months.
Why that date? Oh, gotcha. Okay.
It's just 6
months.
I just think I'm interested for two reasons. One, you know me, I'm an addictive person. Here I am rolling my cigarettes, drinking my hot toddy. I love cigars. I love all that. So I'm an addictive person. One of my addictions is social media. And I find myself sometimes waking up in the morning, flipping over, and I've got, I've got a million Bible apps, and it's like, don't forget to pray today. And I'm like, get out of the way. I need to go on Twitter and see that. It's like, I'm just like, why am I doom scrolling as the first thing I do in the morning? It's an addiction. I want the dopamine. I want to see, someone liked what I said. And I thought, out of all of the things that, or, that sort of progressive way of dealing with addiction is to turn around and go, well, you're not really like a cokehead or an alcoholic or whatever. What you're doing is you're numbing yourself because you can't deal with reality or whatever. And I'm like, if I had to give up something that I was addicted to, what would I give up? And I go, I would give up social media in a flash. And imagine it wouldn't be difficult for me because I would go, I know it would be a couple of days of pain, but I would just go, I think it's worth doing just as a social experiment for yourself to come back 6 months later. A, I've got to finish this book and I'm now really into it. So I've got to finish the book. And B, I'm like, do I really care if the first time I realize this World War III has happened is the big flash? You know, do I want to be tweeting all the way up till the bomb goes off? No, I don't give a like, maybe I'm sat in the garden reading a book. I've got a stack of books that I haven't read, and I like reading. I've got a stack of like 25 books now that I just haven't read. So I'm like, maybe I should just read that in the morning instead of going on to social media and going, yeah, Ukraine. Oh, you know, I might as well just wait for the whole, like flares to come back into fashion. Just wait for the next pandemic to come round. And the first thing I'll know about it is, you know, there's anti-bac outside a pub and, you know, everyone's wearing a mask. I wonder what it would be like to completely disengage 100% from the world. The social media world, not the real world, you know, not the world that we live in. But I found myself, I was walking with Lizzie the other day because I'm very lucky, you know, I've got some real great blessings in my life, Lizzie being the biggest one, really, other than my amazing kids. And I was walking with her the other day and I found all of these thoughts that were coming into my head while we're walking the dogs. And I'm like, usually I'm walking the dogs, I'm not thinking about anything. I'm like talking to her, we talk about the world a bit, you know, we shoot the breeze. It's a nice part of the day to walk the dogs. And I found my thoughts from not work, but, you know, one's life started intruding on my walk. And I'm going, I kind of want to look at my phone halfway in the middle of the woods, you know, and I'm just like, this is not what you should be doing. This is not your purpose in life. So that's where I'm sort of sat at the moment. And I've thought about it for a few weeks and I've tried little stints to go to switch it off for 5-6 hours, leave my phone in another room. And I've actually found it quite enjoyable. So that's my thought. What do you think?
Well, I think it's a good journey you're on there. I have thought about this many times. I have told Lori often. We actually talk about this very issue from time to time. If I didn't do what I do for a living, I know that I would not be on social media because I hate it. And they tell me I should never say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. I don't even know. Somebody else runs all my other social media except for Twitter, and even some of my Twitter other people do. So I wouldn't even know how to get on my Facebook. Apparently I'm on TikTok or Insta. I call them collectively Insta Twit Face. You know, there are other people who can get on there and be me, you know, and tweet things, but Twitter, I can enjoy Twitter, but I can also find it, just as you said, it can be extremely addictive. And I find that when I am my work, I think an important aspect of my work is what I call productive loafing. Yesterday was my first day of productive loafing in 2 months. I have done nothing but work all day, every day, 12 hours a day. And yesterday was the first day that I productively loafed. And what I mean by that is it's, you know, I used to say to, you know, my staff that being busy isn't the same as being productive. And that guy over there who gets up and is bouncing the tennis ball off the wall and such, he's maybe twice as productive as this guy over here who's busy all the time, but never at the right things and never seems to get anything done. And I can see what's going on with this guy. He's working out an issue. He's thinking about something. And I find that for me as a writer, you know, as a thinker, there's a bit of a principle that I remember being taught by John Lennox, actually, the Oxford mathematician and good friend of mine, as I call him, the C.S. Lewis of our time. But I won't go so far as to call what I've done astronomy. I'll call it stargazing. And never so grand as astronomy. But there's this principle when you're looking at a very distant star that's very faint, and it's kind of weird, actually, that when you look at it through the lens, if you look directly at it, it kind of disappears. So they will tell you look just away from it, and you'll begin to see it in your peripheral vision. And I sometimes feel that for me, when I'm writing my books, all of my books, I wrote like this: get up in the morning, get breakfast, review what I wrote the day before, then write, have lunch, and then go for, say, a run on the beach, 6 miles or something like that. Come back, cool down, take a shower, then write again until evening, and then read aloud what I've written. Some people, like Dinesh D'Souza, tells me he can write about 4 hours a day. Metaxas tells me something fairly similar. For me, I can go 12, 16 hours a day. But I find that run and that sitting in the shower is when I'm cooling down, is part of that's my productive loafing, because that's when I'm working out a problem. And it's where I've stared at the thing, whatever the thing is, so long that it's begun to disappear. Yeah. And now when I go for that bike ride or I go for that run and I'm listening to music and apparently thinking of something else, I call them my hamsters. It's like the hamsters are running on the wheel in the back of my brain, and I'm singing, Comfortably Numb, or something. And then all of a sudden they spit forward the answer to the question. And anyway, the point that I'm making as it relates to social media is I think social media is it's that thing that is constantly interrupting our serious thinking, which is done in what you are describing when your walk is productive loafing. Really, it's where you're kind of clearing your mind and those things start coming to you. And sometimes they're uncomfortable thoughts. And that's because we're so used to filling our day with noise, just a cacophony of noise, that we drown out the serious thoughts that begin to crowd in. And usually the only time people really think seriously in a day are those few moments where everything is off just before they fall asleep. And anyway, I guess for me, when I start getting away from all that kind of stuff, and as I say, yesterday was a very good day of productive loafing for me. I went for 2 very long walks. And during those walks, I came back and I go, this is the domino theory in reverse. I wasn't even thinking about that. I was thinking on something else, but the hamsters were working that out. And I've been thinking about World War III and all that. And then I came up with a couple of other, little analogies. I thought, okay, now I know what that article is going to look like. So I agree with that. I think that's a productive journey that you're on. I might do that with you if you decide you're really serious about it and really going to do it. Here's what I predict would happen: you become happier. Yeah, you become happier. Mm-hmm. I noticed that with Lori, when she gets off social media, she immediately becomes a much more optimistic person. And Lori has a principle where she says, I try to stay away from news that isn't actionable. And her meaning being that, I can just fill my day reading about, a child who fell in, through a manhole in, Bangladesh, and the efforts to get them, but it's not actionable for me. It doesn't mean I don't care. It means it's not within my sphere, my world. And I think there's some wisdom in that.
I think I cannot see a reason not to do it, other than I can see a lot of pluses. So I was, I was reflecting, and I have reflected in recently about the last year of my life. So bearing in mind the 4 that came before it, of, I came out of an acting career, which I truly enjoyed. The actors less so, but the acting itself I enjoyed. And I then came out of that career. I then went into whatever it is that I do now. I still have if someone asked me what I did for a job, if I had to fill it on a form, I wouldn't know what to write. But my last year, particularly last year, was very, very grueling on me. I lost a job. I got fired from a job for saying something really non-controversial. I lost a libel case, which we're now appealing because apparently I'm still a racist, which is like insane. And I sort of look at it and I go, I couldn't get hired in a supermarket in this country. I couldn't. Like, if I went into the local village and tried to get a job in the supermarket, someone would complain and I wouldn't be able to be hired. So I've gone from having 50 prospective employers 5 years ago and a 22-year career where I made significant sums of money every single year and contributed to the state and to the very institutions that want to see me silenced and dead. And I am left in this position where I have no real employer. I have a patron, and we do this stuff and I do other stuff. But ultimately, I go, there's no harm in me returning to a period of what it is that I do best, which is think. Thinking got me into this mess. Thinking will get me out of it. And so I need purpose. I feel I have a very strong sense of purpose. I was a salary hound for years as an actor. It's like, be there at 5 o'clock in the morning. Your Mercedes will pick you up at 5 o'clock in the morning, whatever. And you just did that for 22 years. And it's like, now you're doing a scene, you're angry here. And so you need to shout at this person, or you're crying here, or you have to have sex with this girl in this scene, whatever. I'm now in a period of going, I have a lot going on in my emotional life. Like my home life is very calm. I've never been calmer. There's complications around my divorce, but my current home life is really, really calm. And I'm like, well, why do I have this sort of mid-level anxiety like buzzing away at me? And part of me has come to the conclusion I don't feel this sense of purpose. Other than to go, I'm sucking purpose out of unactionable trauma, like Laurie's put. So I then come to the conclusion of going, I've been trying it for the last couple of weeks. I've been going, I'll just leave my phones just somewhere else for a while. And I feel better. And then I notice that if I do something today, like I just said to Lizzie yesterday, I said, I have to do something tomorrow, which makes me feel like I've achieved something, but it has to be manual. So I went and built a bench seat in our kitchen because I've been wanting to do it since we moved in, 4 months. And I was like, I'm doing it tomorrow. Will you help me? And when I say, will you help me? I mean, will you just walk around and applaud while I do all the stuff and not point out the mistakes, And I just think that I'm going to do that, actually. And I'm just trying to work out how I phrase it to people, because they will go, oh, you can't take it anymore. It's like, no, I'm actually going to use it as an exercise in self-discipline, which is to say, I believe that I can vanish from this sphere for 6 months. I can spend all of the time I would be doom scrolling, reading the 25 books that I need to read. And that's bearing in mind that I read anyway. And writing and finishing this book. And I sent the first bit, the first 20,000 words over to my agent, and he then sent it. He came back and he was like, this is really, really good. So I'm like, I enjoy doing that. I enjoy sitting down and writing. I enjoy it. I can sit in this office, turn those lights off and that camera off, open those curtains, and I can just sit in here and write. And that's what I'm going to do. And I'm the only two things that are stopping me doing it are, should there be any media presence at all, like our conversations or Calvin's conversation with me, which I really take great heart from, and I love them. Or, can those conversations be had on the phone? And can you just start them up again in 6 months and come back into the arena and see that everything is exactly the same? Nothing has changed. A lot of people have got more stressed and more upset, and they've spent 6 months of their life wasting time when they could be doing something actually really productively loafing. Or actually being productive, because I need to be productive, because if I don't have a purpose, I feel lost. And it comes into stark relief when your personal life is good, because my personal life is really good. So I'm like, oh, I'm happy today. This is good. Oh, we're walking the dogs. This is fun. Why am I feeling? You start to notice anxieties that you never noticed before. And you go, oh, I've spent the last 5 years running on adrenaline, fighting to try and clear my name, to try and stop people saying you're a racist, to try and, whatever it is that I do, fighting to stop these people teaching this dreadful shit in schools, fighting 24 hours a day. unending adrenaline. And I just think, no, it's time you don't do that. That's not your purpose. Your purpose isn't to burn out. Your purpose is to create, not to die fighting. That's, there may come a time for that, but it's not today.
Yeah, well, I think I agree with all of that. I very much am a believer in disengaging from time to time. Now, if Lori were sitting here, unfortunately for me, she isn't, but she would be giving me a look that says, "You never do that. You work nonstop. It's constant." And she's been on me a bit on the part of the trip where she's been here with me, because I have been working. I mean, I'm very mindful of company money. You know what I mean?
Me too.
I don't want to waste company money. I want to make good on the investment in me to do the things that I'm supposed to do, and that I feel very called to do. I have a very strong sense of mission, a strong sense of purpose, but you come to a place of real diminishing returns, don't you? Where if you're working all the time, you lose creativity. Here's a good example. I was talking to a restaurateur here in Rome, a woman that I know reasonably well, and she was telling me, I was sitting and chatting with her the other night, and she said, I think I'm going to sell the restaurant. And I said, really? And she said, yep. She said, I've been running it nonstop for 15 years. She said, I'm exhausted, but she says, worse, I'm bored. I'm bored.
Yes.
And she says, I sense it. I realize it. I've been working, and she does. She works 6-7 days a week. And she says, I've lost any sense of creativity. I need a new challenge. And she says, I'm going to sell it. I'm going to travel a little bit, seek some inspiration, try to restart my creative purpose. And then I'm going to come back with this. And she told me what the thing was, and I won't say it, but the thing that she's then going to do, which sounded pretty spectacular to me, that I thought was, but I thought, I've been there, I've done that, I understand that. Sometimes that need to seek that inspiration, to find your energy, your creativity again, is really, really important. But to go back to what where we started with this, and that is the whole idea of social media. Social media was created in part to is created to be addictive, because it does give you that rush. When you say, "Oh, people like what I had to say. Tell me how wonderful I am," or "Tell me I'm an idiot, should be executed." Whatever the case may be, but also to keep you in a constant state of anxiety, because you're feeling pretty good about things. I mean, this is beautiful. It's lovely. When we're done here, I'll go with Lori and my son, my daughter-in-law, to dinner. And there's nothing for me to feel anxious about in that. But the moment you pick up your phone and you see that, Zelensky said this about the United States, or, Kim Kardashian, she's now doing this, Taylor Swift. I mean, how dare her, or whatever. You just immediately feel like the world needs my wisdom on this. I need to chime in and say something about it. And I think the world will be a much better place without social media. And I should almost certainly, doing what I do for a living, shouldn't tell people this. But if I didn't do what I do for a living, there's no way I'd be on social media. Yeah. I mean, I just have zero desire to be on social media. And I would adopt Lori's rule that I would delve into those things that were actionable and where I felt like, they were in my lane and they were things that I needed to address. But otherwise, I would not be a news junkie. I would be sure to make an informed vote when that time came.
Well, what we should do,
I'd stay away from it, because I think it's ruinous.
I do as well. I think it's totally ruinous. What we should do then, here's our deal. Let's think about it together for the next 7 days. We'll speak in private. I did try and call you earlier because I was going to sort of say to you, this is what's been going through my mind for the past month. But let's talk about this.
Did I not answer?
No. but it's fine.
Really? It didn't even ring on my end.
I signaled.
That's weird.
I signaled you.
I have found with that, just worth saying.
Yeah,
here,
it doesn't
I found
ring.
The signal. I find that you have to call like 2 or 3 times and then it rings, particularly when somebody is abroad.
Right.
When somebody's abroad, whatever the reason is for that. But I will call and later be talking to someone and say, well, it didn't ring on my end. And I'm like, well, it rang like 10 times on mine.
I know.
So anyway, I didn't know you tried to call me back. I thought, well, Lawrence blew me off.
No, I didn't. I will. So let's mull on this. But I think I'm pretty much there, and that's what I think.
Let me ask you a question. You a question, and this isn't meant to be a provocative question.
Yeah,
it's a question. It's a question. I wonder, as you think about this, would you be, and think before you just knee-jerk reply. Consider it for just a moment. Would you, has the drug of some measure of fame within your own country, especially, would that be something that'd be hard for you to let go? I mean, how would you feel if you went to London one day and not a single person knew who you were? Would you like that, or would you hate it? Would it bruise your ego?
I think it would. Yeah, I think it would bruise my ego. But I think at the same time, it's like you just weigh up the positives and the negatives. It's like, it's really lovely when someone comes up to me and goes, "Thank you so much for what you do," and all that. I really like that. It makes me feel very uplifted. But it's also a stranger. It's not someone I really like the fact that people say you're saying things that I don't have the courage to say, or I can't say because I'd be fired. But at the same time, it's another dopamine hit. And the thing that you
That's why I mentioned it. It relates to social media.
You don't give, I've been famous in my life. It's fine. But I would never say to my son has said this to me. He's like, yeah, but this person's really famous. And I said, poor them. It's like, fame is not a good thing for anybody. It's not a good thing. There are things that renown is good. Like a lot of the things that happen after you die, they're good to say, oh, that person did something good. And it's great when someone comes up to you on the street, but ultimately people struggle with it. And I think that that's okay. I'm not saying I'm checking out. I'm saying I think it's a good exercise in self-discipline to spend 6 months away just to see whether the story is the same when you came back. Because that in itself would inform you of something. And I think that that's the most important thing for me is to go, I have a lot of things to do personally that do not need that sort of, I don't need to turn on, to wake up in the morning, roll over, go, I've got 4 WhatsApps. Okay. Oh, so I've got this meeting today. WhatsApp. Okay. And then you're like, oh, WhatsApp. Oh, what's my app next to WhatsApp? Twitter. Oh, so I go on Twitter, and then within 10 minutes of being, and you're like doing your emails and thing, within 10 minutes, you're outraged that Kim Kardashian's not wearing a bra. And you're like, I can't, But anyway, I have to run, my friend. Because it's
all right. Cool. Well, I mentioned the issue that particular question came to mind because maybe you're talking about something different, and we can have a conversation about that. But I don't think being off social media. I think there are plenty of very influential commentators who don't have anything to do with social media.
I agree.
So you can still, and I think you can become a more meaningful commentator when you're not right in the midst of the cacophony of all these competing and often silly voices. But this has been another episode, profound episode of WTF, the worlds of Taunton and Fox.
We love you, and we'll see you next week, and we'll work out whether you'll see us the week after.